What if I told you the greatest crime in American history was not slavery, not segregation, not even mass incarceration, but something far more quiet, far more hidden, and in some ways, even more powerful than all of that put together? What if I told you the greatest crime was erasure? Not just killing people, but killing memory. Erasing names, erasing towns, erasing entire nations from the story. I want you to picture this in your mind. May 31st, 1921. Just after sunset, Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A black man named O.W. Gurley stands in the doorway of his hotel on North Greenwood Avenue. He looks out over 35 city blocks of black-owned businesses, hotels, theaters, restaurants, law offices, doctors, clinics, a public library, a black newspaper rolling off the presses, more than 1,200 homes, more than 10,000 black residents. On that night, there are more black millionaires per person in this little district than in Beverly Hills. He smells cigars and roasting meat. He hears jazz coming from the Dreamland Theater, children laughing in the street, cars rolling by, shining in the glow of electric lights. It feels like the future. It feels like proof that faith and work and discipline can build an empire from nothing. Now jump a few hours forward. June 1st, 1921. 5 in the morning. The air is thick with smoke. Gurley looks out again, and this time he does not see jazz clubs and churches. He sees flames. He sees white men with rifles walking shoulder to shoulder, moving down the street, setting fire to every single black business they pass. He hears the sound of gunshots. He hears women screaming. He hears airplanes overhead dropping burning rags and dynamite onto black homes. By the time the sun is fully up, 35 city blocks of black wealth have been burned to the ground. At least 300 black residents have been murdered. More than 1,000 homes are gone. 10,000 people are homeless in less than 24 hours. In today's money, over $30 million of property goes up in smoke in one day. And then something even worse happens. City officials change the fire codes so black families cannot rebuild on their own land. Insurance companies deny every single claim and call it a riot, not a massacre. Property records disappear. Newspaper stories disappear. For 75 years, the Tulsa Race Massacre is not in a single Oklahoma textbook. Not one. 3 generations grow up in that state, never hearing the words, Black Wall Street. Now hold that image in your mind. Because while Greenwood is burning in Oklahoma, other things are happening across this country. In California, Japanese farmers, who have turned desert into green farmland, are told by state law they cannot legally own the land they work. In the 1913 California Alien Land Law, their names are forbidden on the deeds. They can grow the food, but they cannot own the soil. In the Southwest, Mexican families whose grandfathers were there when the border moved in 1848 are being labeled aliens in their own homeland and pushed off their ranches through fake lawsuits and violence. In the Dakotas and across the Great Plains, Native parents are watching government agents and church workers take their children away to Carlisle and Haskell and dozens of other boarding schools where their hair will be cut, their languages beaten out of them, and their tribal names replaced with English ones. 4 communities, Black, Native, Asian, Latino. 4 different horrors, but one shared weapon, erasure. Not just killing bodies, killing memory, killing records, killing proof. And here is the part that will shake you. This was not random. This was not a few bad actors. This was a system. This was policy. This was government. City councils, state legislatures, Congress, courts, textbook committees. They all played a role. You and your children were never meant to hear these stories. You were meant to grow up with a neat little story about hard work and freedom, about pioneers and opportunity, about Ellis Island and the American dream. You were meant to believe that if you just grind hard enough If you just behave, if you just pray, you can catch up. But how do you catch up to what you were never told was stolen from you? Today, you and I are going to pull back the curtain on the hidden side of American history. The side that explains why the racial wealth gap looks the way it does. Why some families pass down houses and land and stocks, while others pass down debt and trauma and silence. Why certain neighborhoods are always the sacrifice zones for pollution and police violence and lack of hospitals and schools. After this video, you will understand why your family rents instead of owns. You will understand why your parents and grandparents seemed tired in ways they could not always explain. You will understand why your children and grandbabies are still fighting some of the same demons your grandparents faced in 1963 and 1968. And it is not what they taught you in school. By the time we finish, you will see how the same playbook has been used against Black people, Native people, Asian people, and Latino people. Land theft, forced labor, legal erasure, divide and conquer, then selective amnesia. You will see how our ancestors did not just suffer. They built empires, they built towns, they built coalitions across race and language and border that terrified the system so much that the system had to destroy them and then pretend they never existed. And if you are watching this, especially if you are in that bridge generation in your late 40s, 50s, early 60s, I need you to hear me. You are not just an audience member. You are a keeper of memory. You remember your grandmother talking about segregation. You remember your parents talking about Vietnam, about riots, about church meetings that felt like war rooms. You have lived long enough to see Jim Crow signs come down and mass incarceration numbers go up. You remember life before the internet, and you are now watching your grandchildren grow up on TikTok. That is not an accident. That is a calling. Because your generation sits right in the middle of two massive waves. The civil rights era behind you, Black Lives Matter, and a new wave of youth activism in front of you. God did not put you in that position as a joke. God preserved your family line through slavery, through the Trail of Tears, through exclusion laws, through deportations, through 50 years of mass incarceration for a reason. This video is not entertainment. This is part of that reason. This is about your inheritance, your stolen inheritance, and your assignment. By the end, if you stay with me, you will know 3 things deep in your bones. First, you will know specific hidden stories. Names, dates, locations, dollar amounts that prove this was not random abuse, but organized theft. Second, you will know how those stories connect directly to your life today, to your mortgage or your lack of a mortgage, to your health, to the jobs in your city, to the way police move in your neighborhood, to the way banks treat your family. Third, you will know that your ancestors were never just victims. They were strategists. They were builders. They were millionaires. They were warriors. They were organizers. You are walking around with their blood in your veins. And once you know that, you can never again look at yourself the same way. So take a breath. Settle in. This is not a quick clip. This is a journey. You have been lied to for decades. Today, that ends. But to understand how deep the lie really goes, we need to start with one town that most of us did not hear about until very recently. A town that should have been taught in every 3rd grade classroom in America. A town that proves what Black brilliance can build and what this system will do to stop it. Let us go back to Greenwood. Pause for a second and really imagine the smell of smoke again. It is early morning on June 1st, 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The clock has barely struck 5. The sky is gray not from clouds, but from burning lumber, burning upholstery, burning paper records. Mothers are clutching babies to their chests as they run toward the railroad tracks hoping to escape. Men who wore American uniforms in 1917, who fought in France with the segregated units of World War I, are now crouched behind makeshift barricades on Greenwood Avenue trying to defend their homes with rifles that feel almost pointless against machine guns and fire. The story Greenwood grew out of did not start with flames. It started with faith and vision. In 1906, a black entrepreneur named O.W. Gurley bought 40 acres of land north of the Frisco Railroad tracks in Tulsa. This was not fancy land. It was cheap. It was separate. But he saw something in it. He opened a boarding house. He sold lots only to other black buyers. Before long, a pharmacist named Andrew Jackson, called A.J. Smitherman, started a newspaper. A lawyer named Buck Colbert Franklin opened a practice. Doctors, barbers, teachers, pastors all moved into the area. By 1921, Greenwood had at least 2 theaters, the Dreamland and the Dixie. The Stratford Hotel, owned by J.B. Stratford, had 54 rooms and was one of the largest black-owned hotels in the country. On any given Sunday, you could stroll down Greenwood Avenue and count more than 200 black-owned businesses. This was not charity. These folks were not waiting for someone to save them. They had saved themselves. They had done what America always preached. They had pulled themselves up. They had built a thriving middle and upper class in less than 20 years. And that is exactly why they became a target. On May 30th, 1921, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland walked into the Drexel building downtown to use the only restroom he was allowed to use. He stepped into an elevator run by a white woman named Sarah Page. The elevator jerked. Sarah stumbled. Dick reached out to steady himself. Sarah screamed. Someone heard the scream, saw a black teenager rushing out of the elevator, and decided to tell a story. By the next morning, a white-owned paper ran a headline accusing Dick of assault. There was no evidence. There was no trial. There was no conviction. But the lie was in print. That afternoon, May 31st, a mob of white men gathered outside the county courthouse where Dick was being held. They demanded a lynching. The sheriff refused. Word spread up Greenwood Avenue. Black World War I. Veterans, men who had seen what a real battlefield looked like in France, decided they would not let another lynching happen. So imagine the scene that night. Just after 9:30, about 25 black men, some in their old uniforms, stepped out of cars and trucks and walked toward the courthouse. Each carried a rifle or a shotgun. They were outnumbered 10 to 1, maybe more. A white man stepped forward and tried to take a gun from one of the veterans. The gun went off. Nobody knows exactly who fired first. But within seconds, the street exploded. Bullets flew through courthouse windows. People scattered. By 11, the streets around downtown Tulsa were full of armed white men, some deputized by the sheriff, some just looking for blood. They began moving north toward Greenwood. What followed in the early hours of June 1st was not a riot. It was an invasion. White men went into hardware stores and gun shops and cleared the shelves. The city gave out badges. The National Guard set up machine gun posts on high ground. Around 5 in the morning, the assault on Greenwood kicked into full gear. Witnesses described airplanes flying over the neighborhood, dropping burning rags soaked in gasoline. Others described the planes shooting down into the streets. On the ground, white mobs moved in waves, looting businesses, setting fire to them, and shooting at anyone who tried to escape. By noon, there was almost nothing left. 300 black residents dead is the conservative estimate. Some historians believe the real number may be closer to 500. More than 1,256 houses burned. 35 city blocks wiped out. $2 million in property in 1921, money. Over $30 million today. And then came the second phase, the erasure. City leaders did not just sit back. They took active steps to make sure Greenwood never rose again. Within days, they changed the fire codes to require more expensive building materials that most black residents could not afford. They tried to seize the burned land using eminent domain to build a new train station. Insurance companies took one look at the claims, saw the word riot in the policies, and denied every single payout. White newspapers told the story as if black people had started an uprising and gotten what they deserved. Mass graves were dug. Bodies were dumped into the Arkansas River. Witness after witness would later testify that trucks carried corpses away in the night. But for decades, there was no official search, no serious excavation, no public memorial. Now ask yourself this: how many times did you hear about the Boston Tea Party in school? How many times did you hear about Paul Revere? How many times did you hear about the Alamo? And now, ask yourself, how many times did you hear the words, Greenwood, Tulsa, 1921? For most of us, the answer is never, or maybe once in passing. That silence is not an accident. It is policy. And Tulsa is not a freak exception. It is a pattern. Rosewood, Florida in January 1923. Another thriving black town. Another lie about an assault. Another white mob. Dozens of black residents killed. The whole town burned. Survivors fleeing into the swamps. The state of Florida does not even start investigating until 1994. Wilmington, North Carolina, November 10th, 1898. A multiracial city government with black aldermen and a black-owned newspaper violently overthrown in what historians now call the only successful coup on American soil. At least 60 black residents killed, hundreds more driven out. For a century, local white leaders called it a race riot and blamed the victims. Elaine, Arkansas, September 30th, 1919. Black sharecroppers organized to demand fair payment for their cotton. White deputies show up at a church meeting with guns. Shots are fired. Within days, hundreds of armed white men joined by federal troops sweep through the countryside, killing black men, women, and children. Official counts say around 200 black people killed. Local leaders call it a Negro uprising. Do you see the pattern starting to form? Every time black people build wealth or organize for fair pay or step into political power, the system calls it a threat. Mobs move in. Officials look the other way or actively help. People are killed. Property is seized. Then the record is cleaned up. The language is softened. Riot instead of massacre. Disturbance instead of coup. Uprising instead of terror. And here is the part that ties directly to your life right now. In 2019, the Federal Reserve and other researchers pointed out that the median white household in America has around $188,000 in wealth. Savings, home equity, retirement accounts. The median black household sits around $24,000. The median Latino household is somewhere around $36,000. Native households often have even less, sometimes around $18,000. Those are not just numbers on a chart. That is whether your kids can inherit a house. That is whether your parents could help with college. That is whether a medical emergency wipes out your life or just bruises it. When you hear that gap, you will often hear two stories. One story says, people of color just do not work hard enough or save enough. Another story says it is all about personal choices. But when you zoom in on what actually happened in places like Greenwood, Rosewood, Wilmington, Elaine, and dozens of smaller towns that never made the news, you see something else. You see organized theft. You see generational wealth being burned, seized, or denied by policy. You see thousands of black families, and later Native Asian and Latino families, being pushed off land that would now be worth millions. You see children growing up without inheritances, not because their grandparents did not build anything, but because what they built was taken violently and then erased from the record. So when someone asks, "Why are you still talking about race? Why can't you just move on?" The answer is simple: because the theft never stopped, and the erasure never stopped. But to really see how deep this goes, we have to expand our view beyond Tulsa, because this pattern did not just hit Black communities. It hit the First Nations on this land. It hit the immigrants who built the railroads. It hit the families whose border moved over them. And that is where we are going next. Before we move on, take a moment and think about this. If the story of Greenwood had been taught in every third-grade classroom in America side by side with the Boston Tea Party and Abraham Lincoln, what else would be different? How would you have seen yourself differently at 8 years old? How would your children see themselves now? Hold that question, because now we are going to step even further back in time and even wider in scope to the first pillar of this erasure machine: the theft of land on a scale that still shapes every acre you walk on today. Long before anyone talked about Tulsa or Rosewood, long before railroads and border walls, this entire continent was already mapped, governed, and cared for by nations that most of us only hear about in past tense. Before 1492, every single acre of what is now called the United States was indigenous land. Every river had a name in tongues, like Cherokee, Lakota, Diné, Haudenosaunee. Every mountain stood inside someone's story. Estimates vary, but historians talk about at least 500 distinct tribal nations and more than 2.4 billion acres of land under their control. Let that number sit for a second. 2.4 billion acres. Forests, rivers, plains, deserts, coastlines. By 1900, Native people controlled less than 2% of that land. How do you shrink a people's land base from everything to almost nothing in roughly 4 centuries? You do it with repeated, deliberate acts of policy. One turning point came on May 28, 1830, when President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act. That law gave the federal government power to force tribes in the Southeast off their ancestral lands and push them west of the Mississippi River. Over the next decade, about 100,000 Native people from nations like the Cherokee, Muskogee Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole were marched west at gunpoint. You might have heard 3 words: Trail of Tears. But that phrase can sound almost poetic if we are not careful. It was not poetic, it was logistical horror. Picture the winter of 1838. A Cherokee woman named Tsiyu Gonsini, also known in English as Dragging Canoe, is not on this march because he resisted earlier, but his grandchildren are. Soldiers come to a log cabin in northern Georgia and tell a family they have 1 hour to pack. They can carry what fits on their backs. Everything else, the fields, they plowed the tools. They bought the chickens, they raised the quilts, their grandmother sewed, stays behind. Marches begin. Over the next several months, around 16,000 Cherokee walk roughly 1,000 miles to what is now Oklahoma. Historians estimate that at least 4,000 die along the way from cold disease and starvation. That is one nation, one route. Similar marches hit the Creek and Choctaw and others. By 1840, Native nations in the Southeast have lost millions of acres of some of the most fertile land in the country. White settlers move in. Cotton plantations spread. Wealth multiplies, but not for the people who first knew those rivers. Then in 1862, in the middle of the Civil War, another law quietly passes that reshapes who owns land across the Midwest and West. The Homestead Act. On paper, it sounds fair. Any adult citizen or intended citizen can claim 160 acres of public land, live on it for 5 years, improve it, and then own it. In practice, This law takes around 270 million acres of land that had belonged to indigenous nations and hands it out almost entirely to white settlers for little or no money. Think about that for a second. 270 million acres. Given away. That is generational wealth on a scale most of us cannot comprehend. Over time, those acres become family farms, then sometimes suburbs, then sometimes corporate holdings. They are passed down in wills. They are used as collateral for loans. They become the foundation of white middle-class stability. Then comes another move. The Dawes Act of 1887. On paper, again, it sounds like reform. Instead of communal tribal land, Native people will get individual allotments, usually 160 acres for a family. After those allotments, any remaining land is declared surplus and opened to white settlement. You can probably guess what happens next. Between 1887 and 1934, Native nations lose around 90 million acres more through this allotment process. Land that had been held collectively for centuries, governed by tribal law, is chopped into parcels that are much easier to tax, easier to buy out, and easier to steal. Often the best land never makes it into Native hands at all. It goes straight to railroads, mining companies, and white homesteaders. Then, as the 20th century wears on, a new tactic rises. It is not only about land anymore. It is about people, about identity, about taking children out of communities and trying to scrub the culture out of them. Starting in the late 1860s and running deep into the 1970s, the federal government and various churches run more than 300 indigenous boarding schools across the country. You might have heard the slogan from one of the most famous ones, the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. Kill the Indian, save the man. Imagine this very personally. It is 1925. You are a Lakota mother on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Government agents ride up with a priest and tell you your children have to go away to school. They say it is the law. They say your kids need to be civilized. If you resist, they threaten to cut off rations for your family. So you watch a wagon roll away with your 8-year-old son and your 10-year-old daughter in the back, eyes wide, clutching a small blanket and a beaded necklace. At the school, the first thing the staff does is cut their hair. Long braids that held meaning in your culture drop to the floor. They wash their mouths out with lie if they speak Lakota. They give them English names and uniforms. They work them hard, often in fields and workshops with little food and brutal discipline. Children die there, from tuberculosis, from influenza, from abuse. Many are buried in small cemeteries on school grounds. Parents are never told exactly what happened. When Canada started digging into its own boarding school graves in 2021 and beyond, it sent shockwaves. But in the United States, those stories are still only beginning to surface. Hundreds, maybe thousands of children lie in unmarked graves near places like Carlisle Haskell in Kansas and dozens of smaller mission schools. Now tie this back to the idea of erasure. The land is taken often with a legal document, a treaty, a deed, a homestead application. Then, when natives demand justice, those same papers are used against them. The law says you signed. The law says you ceded this. The law says your land is now surplus. The boarding schools do not just aim to change behavior. They aim to break the chain of memory. If children grow up not speaking their language, not knowing their stories, not knowing the names of the mountains or the treaties, it becomes much easier 2 generations later to say this was always ours. But here is the part no one can fully erase. Even as land shrinks, even as kids are dragged away, Native nations resist. In the 1890s, the ghost dance spreads across the plains as a spiritual movement of hope and resistance. In 1969, a group of Native activists occupy Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay, turning an abandoned prison into a symbol of indigenous rights. In 1973, at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, the American Indian movement and local Lakota people occupy the site of an 1890 massacre for 71 days, demanding that the United States honor its treaties. This is not a story of passive victims. This is a story of nations under siege that still find ways to fight back. Now again, bring this into right now. Today, Native Americans have some of the highest poverty rates of any group in the United States. On many reservations, unemployment runs above 50%. Life expectancy can be 20 years shorter than the national average. Some of the worst environmental disasters, from uranium mining on Navajo land to oil pipelines cutting through treaty territory in the Dakotas, hit Native communities first and hardest. People will look at those numbers and say something must be wrong with those communities. But when you remember that in a few generations they went from 2.4 billion acres to a fraction of that, from full control of their own legal systems to being wards of a government that saw them as obstacles, from speaking their own languages to being punished for doing so, the question changes. The real question is not why are there so many problems on reservations. The real question is, how are people still holding on at all? How are cultures still alive? How are languages coming back? How are young Native activists still blocking pipelines and running for office, and reviving ceremonies their grandparents were beaten for practicing? And if you are not Native yourself, you might ask, what does this have to do with me? With my Black family in Chicago, with my Mexican-American cousins in Texas, with my Asian elders in California, with my white neighbor in Ohio? Here is the answer. The land under almost every American city was taken in similar ways. If you own a home in Oklahoma, there is a good chance it sits on land that once belonged to Cherokee or Creek or Osage people. If your grandparents got a farm in Nebraska through the Homestead Act, that was only possible because Lakota land was declared empty. If your family wealth traces back to a railroad town, that track likely cut through treaty land. We are all living inside the ripple effects of that first massive theft. Now, if you are still with me, you have seen two pillars of this dark history. The burning of black wealth in places like Greenwood, the ripping away of native land and children. You might already feel your temperature rising. You might feel that mixture of anger and grief and a strange kind of clarity, like clicking a lens into focus and suddenly seeing structure where before there was chaos. Stay with that feeling, because we are not done. There is a third pillar in this story. The way this country used Asian bodies to build key parts of its wealth, then slammed the door and pretended those people had never been here at all. And the truth of that story will change how you see every headline about model minorities, about pandemics, about who is considered a real American. We are about to go there. But before we step onto those mountain tracks and into those internment camps, let me pause and speak straight to you. If anything in what you have heard so far has hit you in the chest, if you are feeling that mix of shock and recognition, if you are thinking about your grandmother telling you bits and pieces, and suddenly those pieces are clicking together, I want you to do something practical. Right now, if you can pause this video for just a second and drop the word truth in the comments. Just that one word. Truth. Hit the like button if you are tired of being lied to in classrooms and on news channels. Share this with at least one person who you know has been wrestling with the feeling that something is missing from the story they were taught. That is not about boosting numbers. That is about building a visible record. A record that says, we remember. We see. We are not asleep. Because the same forces that erased Tulsa from textbooks, that sanitized the Trail of Tears, that turned mass deportations into footnotes, are still at work today in how algorithms push or bury content. This kind of history does not get promoted by accident. It spreads because people like you decide to push it forward. All right, take a breath. We are not even halfway through the most important revelations. You have seen fire in Greenwood. You have walked a little of the Trail of Tears. Now we are going to ride a train through the Sierra Nevada mountains in the 1860s with men whose names did not make the photographs. And after that, we are going to walk into fields in California and courtrooms in Texas, where Latino families were turned into outsiders on their own land. Each of these stories is its own wound, but together they form a pattern that cannot be denied. And what comes next is going to shatter a myth that runs very deep in this country. The myth that some people of color made it because they just behaved better. Get ready, because once we walk through this next door, there is no going back to the old narrative. So let us step onto that mountain. It is February 1865 in the Sierra Nevada range of California. Snow is piled 10 feet deep on both sides of a narrow ledge. The air is thin. The wind cuts through every layer of clothing. On that ledge, hundreds of Chinese laborers cling to the rock face, hanging in woven baskets, lowered by ropes over sheer cliffs. In their hands, they hold nitroglycerin and black powder. Their job is to drill holes into the rock pack in explosives, light the fuses, then signal to be pulled up before the entire cliff face explodes. They work for the Central Pacific Railroad. Men like Leland Stanford and Collis Huntington have bet millions on building a line from Sacramento to Promontory Summit in Utah. That line will unlock Western land. For white settlement, move troops, move goods, move money. It will be an artery of empire. At first, the railroad bosses hire mostly white workers, many of them Civil War veterans. But the white crews walk off the job when they see how hard and how dangerous the work really is. So in 1865, the company brings in 50 Chinese workers as a test. Those 50 work hard. They work precise. They do not quit. Within 2 years, there are more than 10,000 Chinese laborers blasting and carving their way through the granite of the Sierra. They make up as much as 90% of the Central Pacific workforce. They do the most dangerous jobs, hanging off cliffs, digging tunnels through solid rock, shoveling snow out of drifts 60 feet deep. Many of them never go home. Historians estimate that at least 1,000 and maybe as many as 1,200 Chinese workers die building that line. From explosions, from avalanches, from disease in the camps. Their names are rarely recorded. When they die, their bodies are sometimes shipped back to China if their families can afford it. Often, they are buried in unmarked graves near the tracks. On May 10, 1869, the last rail is laid at Promontory Summit, Utah. 2 locomotives, one from the Central Pacific and one from the Union Pacific, face each other, nose to nose. A special golden spike is tapped in with a ceremonial hammer. A famous photograph is taken. White executives stand on the engines. White foremen raise champagne bottles. White workers crowd the frame. The Chinese workers who actually built the hardest parts of the line are nowhere in that picture. Some of them stand off to the side, just out of frame, watching a history they made get sealed without their faces in it. For the next few decades, Chinese immigrants keep working in the West. They open laundries and restaurants in San Francisco, Sacramento, Seattle. They build small businesses in mining towns and logging camps. They live in Chinatowns that grow into vibrant worlds of their own. And then, the system changes the script. On May 6, 1882, President Chester Arthur signs the Chinese Exclusion Act. It is the first major federal law to ban an entire ethnic group from immigrating to the United States. It bars Chinese laborers from entering for 10 years, then gets renewed and tightened again and again. It also says that Chinese people already in the country cannot become citizens. Think about that. You use a group of people to build your infrastructure. Then you write a law that says they are permanently foreign. You benefit from their sweat and their deaths. Then you tell them and their children that they will never truly belong. The Exclusion Act is not the only law. In 1913, California passes the Alien Land Law, forbidding what they call aliens ineligible for citizenship from owning farmland. Everyone understood who that meant. Asian immigrants, mostly Japanese. By that time, Japanese farmers had become incredibly successful in California agriculture. On less than 4% of the farmland, they were producing more than 40% of the vegetables. In places like Fresno and the Sacramento Valley, Japanese families make rocky soil bloom. They lease land because they cannot own it outright. They build homes. They send their American-born children who are citizens by birth to local schools. They prove that with a chance, they can thrive. So the system changes the rules. White growers complain. Politicians warn of an Asian invasion. Newspapers run cartoons of yellow hordes taking over. The Alien Land Law says, if you cannot become a citizen because of your race, you also cannot own land. Now connect this with a picture you might have seen. It is February 1942. A line of Japanese-American families stands on a San Francisco street, each person carrying a small suitcase or a box. Police and soldiers with rifles watch them. A sign tacked up on the wall says that by noon on a certain date, all persons of Japanese ancestry citizens, or not, must report for evacuation. On February 19, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. It authorized the military to create exclusion zones and remove any persons considered a threat. In practice, that meant rounding up around 120,000 Japanese Americans from the West Coast and sending them to 10 inland camps surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. Families in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, small towns up and down the coast, are told they have days to sell their property. Houses, farms, stores, cars. They have to sell fast, so they get pennies on the dollar. White neighbors sometimes scoop up bargains. Banks foreclose on mortgages. The government does not store their possessions. It does not compensate them fairly. By the time the camps close in 1945, Japanese American families have lost homes and businesses worth billions in today's dollars. In 1988, after decades of organizing by survivors, the United States finally passes the Civil Liberties Act. It apologizes for the internment and pays each surviving internee $20,000. That sounds like a lot until you remember that many families lost farms that would now be worth millions. A token check arrives decades later after most elders have died, and the real wealth is gone. So again, the pattern shows itself. Use people for their labor. Then label them as dangerous. Pass laws to exclude them. Seize or destroy what they built. Then tell a cleaned-up story. If you grew up in the United States, you might have learned 1 or 2 lines about Chinese workers on the railroad. You might have seen a paragraph about Japanese internment. You probably did not see much about Filipino labor organizing or South Asian anti-colonial activists who passed through cities like San Francisco and New York. You almost certainly did not hear about how Asian American students in the 1960s at San Francisco State College and the University of California, Berkeley, launched some of the first ethnic studies strikes in the country, or how Chinese and Japanese and Filipino activists stood shoulder to shoulder with Black Panthers and Chicano organizers, creating something they called Third World Liberation Front. Instead, starting in the 1960s and 70s, a new story got pushed hard. The model minority myth. Asian Americans, especially certain groups, got held up as proof that people of color could succeed if they just kept their heads down, studied hard, and did not protest. Look at these people, the story said. They made it. So racism must not be that bad. And if other people of color are still struggling, maybe it is their fault. That myth did three things at once. It erased the history of exclusion, internment, and exploitation that Asian communities had faced. It was used as a stick to beat Black and brown communities, to argue against civil rights and against reparations. And it hid the reality that many Asian groups, especially refugees from wars the United States fought in Southeast Asia, were living in deep poverty in inner cities and small towns. Now, if you are Black and you are watching this, you might be thinking, I've heard that line, the one that goes, Asians made it. Why not you? If you are Asian and you are watching this, you might be thinking, I have been told to be grateful, to be quiet, to be the good one. Both of those feelings come from the same strategy: divide and control. Pit communities against each other, so no one looks up at the system that is playing them both. That is why this memory work matters. Because when you see that the same patterns of theft, exclusion, and erasure have hit you and your neighbor, it gets a lot harder to fall for divide and conquer tricks. Now imagine something with me. Imagine if in 3rd grade, you learned about Greenwood and Rosewood at the same time you learned about the Boston Tea Party. Imagine if in 5th grade, your teacher took you to a map and showed you exactly which indigenous nation's land your school sits on and told you about the treaties that were signed and broken. Imagine if in middle school, your U.S. history textbook devoted serious chapters to Chinese railroad workers, Japanese internment, Mexican repatriation, and the Delano grape strike, right alongside the Revolutionary War and the New Deal. Imagine if in your church, youth group, elders told the truth about how their churches sheltered migrant workers, or how they stayed silent while neighbors were taken away. Do you honestly believe America would look the same today? Would you believe the same stories about who deserves what? Would you swallow the same myths about lazy people who will not work, about criminals who choose their fate, about neighborhoods that are just naturally broken? Or would you look at the numbers on home ownership, on health, on incarceration, and immediately ask what was stolen from these people? What was burned? Who was deported? Who was jailed? What history was buried? That is the world this channel is trying to build. A world where that kind of education, that kind of memory, is not limited to a few college classes or a book you have to dig up on your own. A world where your grandchildren can click play and hear what you were never told when you were their age. And that is why your role in this matters so much. You are not watching this as a passive consumer. You are watching it as someone whose memory is part of the story. So before we move into the next big layer, which is how all of this shows up in your bank account, in your body, in your neighborhood right now, I want to say this plainly. If this has opened your eyes in any way, if you have learned even one name, one date, one pattern you did not know before, if you have felt that pinch in your chest that says, I knew something was wrong, but I could not put words to it, then please do something active with that feeling. Type the word truth in the comments if you have not yet. Not for me, for you, so that you see yourself saying it, so that your children or nieces or nephews, if they ever scroll through, can see your username next to that word. Hit the like button if you are done with pretty lies, if you are tired of your tax dollars and your church offerings and your school curriculum avoiding the real story. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up a little more. Maybe it is an uncle who always says things have always been this way. Maybe it is a coworker who keeps asking why you are still talking about race. Maybe it is a younger cousin who only hears sound bites on social media and has never had anyone break the pattern down slowly. This is not about clout. This is about archive, about leaving a digital trail of memory that says we saw, we learned, we cared. All right? You have stayed with some heavy truth. You have walked through fire, through forced marches, through camps and fields and courtrooms. Now it is time to ask one of the most important questions. How does all of this history show up in your actual life today? Not in the abstract, not as trivia, as dollars and cents, as hospital visits, as school zones, as police stops, as climate disasters. Because once we draw that line, you will never again look at the racial wealth gap, or the health gap, or the prison pipeline, or the immigration panic, or even climate change as separate issues. You will see them as branches on the same old tree. And after we see that we are going to turn the corner from shock to power, from anger to assignment, we are going to talk about who you really are in light of all this, what your ancestors actually left you, and what God might be asking you to do with that knowledge. We are moving from dark history into bright identity. Stay with me, so let us bring this home. You have seen the fires. You have walked the forced marches. You have hung from the cliffs and sat in the camps and stood in the fields while wages vanished. You have watched coalitions rise and leaders murdered. Now we have to answer the question that sits at the center of your everyday life. Why does the racial wealth gap exist? Not just that it exists. Why? Here are the numbers again, and I want you to really hear them this time. The median white household in the United States holds around $188,000 in total wealth. That includes home equity savings, retirement accounts, all of it. The median black household holds around $24,000. The median Latino household sits around $36,000. The median Native American household often holds less than $20,000. That is not a typo. That is not a small difference. That is a canyon. And when you hear those numbers on the news or in a college lecture, the explanation usually goes one of two ways. One version says, people of color just do not work hard enough, do not save enough, make bad financial choices, have kids too young, do not value education. All the coded language that puts the blame on you and your family. The other version, maybe a little more polite, talks about legacy effects and structural disadvantage, but still leaves it fuzzy. Like maybe slavery and Jim Crow just sort of created a head start for white folks, and now it is all water under the bridge. Both versions are lies. The truth is, the wealth gap is not a mystery. It is theft. And the theft is recent, ongoing, and documented. Let us start with the most obvious piece: home ownership. For most middle-class families in America, the single biggest source of wealth is the value of their home. If you own a house in a stable neighborhood and you pay the mortgage down over 30 years, that property becomes an asset you can borrow against, sell for profit, or pass down to your kids. In 1934, as part of the New Deal, the federal government creates the Federal Housing Administration to help Americans buy homes with low-interest loans. Sounds great. Except the FHA draws maps of cities and colors certain neighborhoods red. Red means high risk. High risk means no loans. And the neighborhoods marked red are almost always black and brown. This is called redlining. It is not a secret conspiracy. It is documented policy. The maps still exist. You can look them up online and see your own city divided by color. From the 1930s through the 1960s, millions of white families buy homes in the suburbs with federally backed loans. Those homes appreciate in value. By the time those families retire, they own assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Their children inherit those homes, or the cash from selling them. That becomes a down payment on the next house. Generational wealth starts to compound. Meanwhile, black families, even those with good credit and steady jobs, are denied those same loans. Or they are steered into neighborhoods where property values stay flat because banks refuse to invest. When they finally are allowed to buy it, is often through predatory contracts that let the seller repossess at the first missed payment. No equity, no inheritance, just rent disguised as ownership. That alone accounts for a massive chunk of the wealth gap today. But it does not stop with housing. Think about business ownership. After Tulsa burns, after Rosewood burns, after Wilmington is overthrown, after countless smaller destructions that never made headlines, where do Black entrepreneurs get the capital to rebuild? Banks will not lend to them. White mobs have destroyed their assets. Insurance companies deny the claims. So they start over from zero, or they do not start at all. Think about land. Native families lost 2.4 billion acres. That land now sits under farms, under oil fields, under cities generating trillions in value for people who took it. Japanese families lost farms in California that are now worth millions. Mexican families lost ranchos that are now luxury developments. Imagine if your great-great-grandfather had held on to just 160 acres in what is now Orange County, California. Imagine what that would be worth today. Imagine the choices your parents and grandparents could have made, the schools they could have chosen, the medical care, the breathing room. Now imagine that land was taken by legal trick, or mob violence, or deportation, and no one ever paid your family back. That is not ancient history affecting some abstract number. That is your life right now. That is why your mother rented instead of owned. That is why your father worked 2 jobs and still struggled to keep the lights on. That is why, when you got accepted to college, the money was not there. That is why, when your grandmother got sick, the family had to crowdfund her care. It is not because your family failed. It is because what your family built was stolen, and the thieves got to keep it and pass it down. And here is the part that should make you furious. While this theft was happening, the government was simultaneously creating wealth for white families. The Homestead Act gave away 270 million acres, almost entirely to white settlers. The GI Bill after World War II paid for college and home loans for millions of veterans, but Black veterans were systematically denied access or steered to Black-only schools with fewer resources. Social Security, when it was first created, excluded farm workers and domestic workers, the 2 job categories where most Black and brown people worked in the South. Every time a program was designed to build middle-class wealth, it either excluded people of color by design or was implemented in ways that white officials could manipulate. So when someone says, "My grandfather came here with nothing and pulled himself up," why can't you? The answer is simple. Because your grandfather was given land loans and legal protection. My grandfather was given redlining deportation and burning crosses. Now let us talk about the flip side of wealth, which is debt and extraction. If you cannot build assets, the system finds ways to take what little you do have. Mass incarceration is one of the clearest examples. The 13th Amendment, passed in 1865, abolished slavery, except as punishment for a crime. That one exception is a loophole you can drive a plantation through. Within a few years, Southern states start passing laws called Black Codes, making it a crime to be unemployed, to gather in groups, to speak loudly, to walk at night. Newly freed Black people are arrested in waves, convicted in sham trials, and leased out to plantations, mines, and railroads as convict labor. Slavery never ended. It just changed locations and paperwork. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s. As civil rights laws make open racism harder to enforce, a new language emerges. Tough on crime, war on drugs, law and order. In 1970, the United States has about 300,000 people in prison. By 2000, that number is over 2 million. Today it sits around 2.3 million plus millions more on parole or probation. Black people make up about 13% of the US population, but nearly 40% of the prison population. Latino people are incarcerated at higher rates than white people. Native people are incarcerated at rates higher than almost any other group relative to population size. Once someone is in prison, they work. They make license plates, furniture, clothing, packaged foods. They are paid pennies per hour, sometimes nothing. Private companies profit. State budgets save money. When they get out, they cannot vote in many states. They cannot get student loans. They cannot get public housing. They cannot get most jobs. They are locked out of the economy, then blamed for not thriving. And while they are locked up, their families suffer. Children grow up without fathers, without mothers. Households lose income. Communities lose leaders. Wealth drains out in the form of bail, lawyer fees, phone charges, commissary deposits. Prisons are often built in rural white areas, and the census counts inmates as residents there, shifting political power away from the cities where most inmates come from. It is a system designed to extract, and it is built on the bones of the convict lease system that replaced slavery. Now let us talk about health. COVID-19 hit the world in early 2020. By the summer of that year, it was clear that Black, Latino, and Native people were dying at much higher rates than white people. People tried to explain it away as pre-existing conditions: diabetes, heart disease, obesity. But why do those conditions cluster in communities of color? Because those communities live in neighborhoods with fewer grocery stores that sell fresh produce. Because they live near highways and factories that pollute the air. Because they work essential jobs that do not offer health insurance or paid sick leave. Because the hospitals in their neighborhoods closed due to budget cuts, so they have to travel farther for care. Because for generations the medical system has experimented on them, lied to them, and ignored their pain, so they do not trust doctors until it is too late. That is not genetics, that is geography, and geography is shaped by policy. Policy shaped by the same forces that burned Greenwood and drew the red line maps. Let us talk about climate. When a chemical plant explodes, when a pipeline leaks, when a coal ash pond floods, where does it happen? In poor communities, in Black and brown communities, in Native communities. A place like Cancer Alley in Louisiana, a stretch of land along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, has over 150 oil refineries and chemical plants. The air is thick with toxins. The cancer rates are among the highest in the country. The population is overwhelmingly Black. Flint, Michigan, a majority Black city. Officials switch the water supply to save money. Lead from old pipes leaches into the drinking water. Children are poisoned. Their developing brains are damaged. Officials lie about it for months. Standing Rock, North Dakota. The Dakota Access Pipeline is routed under the Missouri River just upstream from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, threatening their water supply. When it was originally planned to cross near Bismarck, a mostly white city, officials rejected it as too risky. So they moved it to Native land. Do you see the pattern? The same people whose land was stolen are now told that their water, their air, their soil can be sacrificed for the economy. This is not bad luck. This is not coincidence. This is the same map that has been drawn and redrawn for 400 years. So when people ask, why are you still talking about history? This is the answer. Because that history is not past. It is present. Your rent is high because redlining shaped your city. Your cousin is in prison because of laws designed to replace slavery. Your uncle died of COVID because his essential job gave him no protection. Your kids have asthma because the freeway runs through your neighborhood. Your grandmother never owned a home because her family's land was stolen in Tulsa or taken in a Mexican land swindle. or sold under duress before internment. This is not about guilt. This is not about blame. This is about debt. America owes. Now, when the word reparations comes up, people get uncomfortable. They say, I did not own slaves. My family was not even here back then. How can you expect me to pay for something I did not do? Here is the response. First, slavery is not the only crime. We are talking about Tulsa in 1921. We are talking about Japanese internment in 1942. We are talking about redlining into the 1960s. We are talking about mass incarceration and police violence right now. Your lifetime, your parents' lifetime, your children's lifetime. Second, the wealth that was stolen did not disappear. It is still here. It is in the land that was taken. It is in the businesses that were burned and never rebuilt. It is in the homes that were redlined and never bought. It is in the wages that were never paid. That wealth got transferred. It compounded. It sits in trust funds and real estate portfolios and corporate stock. It did not vanish into thin air. It moved from one group of people to another. Third, if you inherit your grandfather's house, you do not get to say, I did not build this, so I should not benefit from it. You take the house. In the same way, if your grandfather benefited from stolen land or stolen labor, you inherit that benefit. You did not create it, but you live inside it. And the people whose ancestors were robbed inherit the loss. Reparations is not charity. It is repayment of debt. What does that look like in practice? For Black Americans, scholars and activists have calculated that the stolen value of slave labor, plus the destroyed wealth of towns like Greenwood, plus the denial of homeownership and GI Bill benefits, adds up to well over $10 trillion in today's money. Some estimates go as high as $100 trillion. For Native Americans, the return of stolen land, the restoration of treaty rights, and compensation for resources extracted from reservations without fair payment. For Japanese Americans, full restitution for internment losses. The $20,000 paid in 1988 was a symbolic gesture, not full repayment. For Mexican Americans and other Latino groups, return of bracero wages, compensation for mass deportations, and restoration of land taken through legal manipulation after 1848. People say we cannot afford that, but we can afford trillion-dollar wars. We can afford trillion-dollar tax cuts for corporations. We can afford to bail out banks. When the political will is there, money appears. The question is not whether we can afford it. The question is whether we have the moral courage to face what was done and make it right. And here is the truth that no one wants to say out loud. If reparations were paid tomorrow, it would not just help Black and brown families. It would help the entire economy. Wealth in the hands of people who have been locked out creates spending, investment, business growth. It is not a giveaway. It is a stimulus. It is justice that happens to also be good economics. But even if it were not good economics, it would still be the right thing to do. Because a nation that refuses to face its debts is a nation living a lie. And if you are a person of faith, you know what Scripture says about debts and jubilee and making things right. So now take a breath. We have walked through some of the hardest ground. We have seen theft. We have seen erasure. We have seen how it shows up in your bank account, in your body, in your neighborhood. We have talked about what is owed. Now we need to turn the corner. Because this is not just a video about what was done to you. This is a video about who you are in spite of it. About who your ancestors were. About what is in your blood. About what God has been preparing you to do with this knowledge. So if you have felt anger rising in you, good. Anger at injustice is righteous. But anger alone will eat you alive if you do not transform it into something else. We are about to transform it into pride, into power, into purpose. Stay with me. You have been taught maybe your whole life that you come from victims, that your people were helpless, that your ancestors were weak, that you are lucky to be here at all. Let me tell you the truth they did not want you to know. You come from warriors. You come from builders. You come from millionaires. You come from people who survived what should have killed them and then built empires anyway. Your black ancestors were kidnapped from nations in West Africa that had universities, trade, networks, art, governance. They survived the Middle Passage, a journey that killed millions. They survived slavery, a system designed to break their bodies and their spirits. And even inside that system, they built culture. They built language. They built churches. They built families. When slavery ended, they built schools and businesses and towns. They built Greenwood. They built Black Wall Street. Then it burned, and they built again. Your native ancestors governed this entire continent for thousands of years. They managed forests, rivers, and plains in ways that sustained life. They created languages, legal systems, trade routes. When European invaders came with guns and disease, your ancestors fought back. They won battles. They negotiated treaties. They hid children in the woods to save them from boarding schools. They kept languages alive in secret. They kept ceremonies alive despite laws banning them. And today, native nations are still here, still sovereign, still fighting pipelines and demanding treaty rights. That is not weakness. That is endurance beyond measure. Your Asian ancestors crossed oceans often with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They hung from cliffs to blast tunnels through mountains. They turned deserts into farms. They built Chinatowns and little Tokyos and Filipino towns that became centers of culture and resistance. When they were locked in camps, they sang songs and painted art and raised children who refused to be ashamed. When they were excluded by law, they found ways to survive anyway. And when the doors finally cracked open, they walked through and built universities and businesses and movements. Your Latino ancestors were here before the border. They built missions and ranchos and pueblos. When the border moved over them, they did not disappear. They kept speaking Spanish. They kept cooking the food. They kept singing the songs. When they were deported by the millions, those who stayed rebuilt. When their wages were stolen, they organized. Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and Larry Itliong didn't beg. They marched. They struck. They won. Every single one of your ancestors faced a system designed to erase them, and every single one found a way to leave you here alive, awake, with a story to carry forward. So do not ever, ever, ever call yourself a victim. You are a survivor of genocide. You are a descendant of people who built wealth from nothing twice, 3 times, every time it was stolen. You are the child of warriors who fought armies and won or lost and fought again. Your poverty is not your fault. It was stolen. Your struggle is not because you are weak. It is because you are strong enough to survive what would have destroyed weaker people. Now I want to speak to something deeper. For those of you who know God, who grew up in the church, who have prayed through hard times, who believe there is something bigger than this world at work. Ask yourself this: why did God preserve your bloodline through the Middle Passage? Why did God keep your people alive through the Trail of Tears? Why did God protect your family through internment camps and deportations and boarding schools and Jim Crow and mass incarceration? What are the odds that you, right here, right now, in this moment in history, are alive if your ancestors were not supernaturally protected? Millions did not make it. Millions died in chains on forced marches and camps and massacres. But your line survived. That is not luck. That is purpose. You were not born in this generation by accident. You were not born between the Civil Rights Movement and Black Lives Matter, between the Vietnam War and the Iraq War, between Jim Crow and mass incarceration, for no reason. You are the bridge. You are the living memory. You remember your grandmother's stories about segregation. You remember the tension in your house when the news showed protests. You survived the crack epidemic, the war on drugs, the prison boom. You raised children in a world that told them they had made it, that racism was over, and then you watched them get stopped by police, watched them get followed in stores, watched them come home exhausted from trying to prove their humanity. You carry the receipts. You are the witness. And now, at this moment when your grandchildren are online, when history is being rewritten in real time, when textbooks are being banned and truth is being called divisive, you are being called to testify. This is not a burden. This is an assignment. Your generation is the last one with direct memory of elders who lived through things that cannot be found in textbooks. When you are gone, the chain breaks. The stories get fuzzy. The details get lost. So what you do with this knowledge right now today matters more than you might realize. You are not supposed to just watch this video and nod and move on. You are supposed to become a keeper of memory, a teller of truth, a breaker of silence. You are supposed to tell your children this story. Do not assume the schools will teach it. Do not assume they will stumble onto it. Sit them down and say, "I learned something you need to know." Then tell them about Greenwood. Tell them about the Trail of Tears. Tell them about the camps. Tell them about the coalitions. Make them repeat the names back to you. Make them understand that this is not optional knowledge. This is survival knowledge. Third, find your people. Whether that is a book club, a church group, a family group, chat, a neighborhood meeting. Find the people who are ready to wake up and share this with them. Do not argue with people who are not ready. Do not waste energy trying to convince someone who has decided to stay asleep. But when you find someone whose eyes are opening, pour into them. Study together. Organize together. Build together. Fourth, demand reparations. Not just as a vague idea, but as a concrete political demand. When you vote, ask candidates where they stand. When you tithe, ask your church if they are addressing historical theft. When you spend money, support Black-owned, Native-owned, Asian-owned, Latino-owned businesses. Move your money in ways that start to repair what was broken. And fifth, walk in your power. Stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop letting people tone police you when you talk about racism. Stop acting like you need to be perfect before you deserve justice. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be free. And freedom is your birthright. Your ancestors did not survive the Middle Passage, the Trail of Tears, the camps, the deportations, the massacres, the lynchings, the prisons, so that you could live small and quiet and grateful for crumbs. They survived so you could be loud, so you could be proud, so you could demand every single thing that was stolen, and more. So walk in that, teach in that, organize in that, love in that, build in that. And when the system pushes back, when people tell you to calm down, when they say you are being divisive, when they say you are living in the past, look them in the eye and say, "No, I am living in the truth, and the truth is setting me free." Now, before we close, I want to pray with you. Whether you are in a church, in your car, in your kitchen, in your bedroom, wherever you are, if you are a person of faith, I want to speak a blessing over you. If you are not a person of faith, you can still receive this as a benediction, as a sending forth, as a charge. Let us pray. Father God, creator, sustainer, keeper of all truth. We come to you today with heavy hearts and strong spirits. We thank you for preserving the truth that we have shared here today, for keeping the memory alive even when textbooks were burned, even when records were destroyed, even when witnesses were silenced. We thank you for every ancestor who refused to be erased, for the builders of Greenwood, who turned ashes into wealth again and again, for the Cherokee, who walked the Trail of Tears and still sang their songs, for the Chinese workers, who hung from cliffs and built what others would not, for the Japanese families, who planted gardens inside internment camps, for the braceros, who picked the crops that fed this nation and never got their wages, for the mothers who hid their children, for the fathers who stood guard, for the elders who whispered the stories when it was too dangerous to say them out loud. We lift up their names, the ones we know and the ones lost to time. We say, we remember you, we honor you, we carry you forward. We pray for justice, Lord, not revenge, justice. We pray for the return of what was stolen, the land, the wealth, the wages, the dignity. We pray that every debt would be acknowledged and repaid, that every lie would be exposed and corrected, that every wound would be named and healed. We pray for the people watching this video right now, the ones who feel the weight of this history in their bones, the ones who have carried shame that was never theirs to carry, the ones who have believed the lies about their own people. Father, set them free. Let this truth break every chain of self-doubt, every whisper that says they are not enough, every system that says they do not deserve. We pray for awakening across this nation, across every community, Black, brown, Native, Asian, and yes, even white brothers and sisters who have been lied to and who are ready to stand on the side of truth. Let this be a generation that breaks silence, that demands justice, that builds coalitions, that refuses to let the past be forgotten. We pray for protection, for every truth teller, for every organizer, for every teacher who dares to tell the real story, for every young person who picks up this burden and carries it forward. Protect them from harm. Protect them from despair. Protect them from the systems that want them silent. We pray for our children and our children's children, that they would grow up in a world where this history is not hidden, where their textbooks tell the truth, where their teachers honor their ancestors, where they don't have to dig through the internet at 2 in the morning to learn who they really are. And we pray for this channel, Lord. Let it be a house of memory. Let every video be a witness. Let every comment be a testimony. Let every share be a seed planted. Let the algorithms that try to bury this truth be overridden by your Spirit, moving through your people. Bless those who seek truth in a world full of lies. Strengthen those who resist erasure. Vindicate the memory of our ancestors. And give us courage right now today to do what you have called us to do. Not someday. Not when we feel ready. Now. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In the name of every ancestor who prayed for this moment. In the name of justice, truth, and love. Amen. Now lift your head. You are not a victim. You are a warrior. You are not forgotten. You are remembered. You are not powerless. You are dangerous to every lie this system has ever told. Walk in that. Live in that. Build in that. And don't let them erase you again. This is your history. This is your inheritance. This is your assignment. Go and do it. Until next time, build wealth. Demand reparations. Remember the theft. Tell the truth. And never, ever, ever forget who you are. You are free.